Hi, and welcome to this session, tutorial 1090 on leveraging SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP deployments on the IBM Power platform. My name is Laurent. I'm with IBM Product Management as part of the IBM Power brand in IBM Infrastructure. And today I'll be taking you through some of the things we do with SUSE jointly to make the life better for SAP customers. And looking at the agenda here, first, I'm going to give you an overview of how IBM and SUSE partner for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server and other SUSE products like the SUSE Multi-Linux Manager. Then we'll look at SAP and why the IBM Power platform running the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server operating system are an especially good environment for SAP deployment. We'll look at the architectural advantages, and then we'll look at some of the unique SUSE Linux on Power features that are only available on that combination and no other platform has them, which is why they're so exciting. So first, let's talk about SUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. At IBM and IBM Infrastructure, SLES is one of the most privileged operating system in the sense that it has the highest level of support by IBM, enterprise support. What does that mean? It means that we support it for mission critical deployments, that IBM can provide level 1, level 2 support, because level 3 is always provided by SUSE. It means we have a dedicated support team just for SUSE Linux Enterprise. It also means we have a dedicated development team working hand in hand jointly with SUSE on enabling the operating system features on our hardware and enabling our hardware features within the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server builds. It also means that SUSE products are orderable from the regular IBM Power catalog. So if you're a business partner reselling IBM Power hardware, you can add SUSE Linux subscriptions in the same order as the hardware. In addition to that, SUSE Linux is fully available in IBM Power Virtual Server, which is our public cloud running both Intel, AMD, and IBM Power servers. And we have what we call full Linux subscriptions, meaning you can order SUSE from IBM and in a pay-as-you-go model and just have the SUSE Linux available in your environments in the IBM cloud. Now, when it comes to hardware support, SLES supports the largest possible IBM Power configuration. At the moment, on Power 10 systems, which is the current generation, we can go all the way 240 cores, 1920 threads, and that's fully supported with a SLES instance. In addition to that, SUSE Linux will support some of the most advanced hardware features like virtual persistent memory, and we'll come back to that because it's very important for SAP environments. Live partition mobility, secure boot, also the ability to resize partitions on the fly, adding or removing memory and CPUs. So it's really the highest possible level of support. Finally, I want to point out that when you're on Power, you're always virtualized. It's because we have virtualization built in the hardware itself instead of requiring a third-party software hypervisor. The virtualization is in the hardware itself. Now, also want to make the point as SLES 15, which is the current current version, I should say, supports the last 3 generations of Power systems, Power 8, Power 9, and Power 10, ever since SLES 15 SP3. Then, of course, we have SLES 16, which is planned and will intend to certify SLES 16 and Power for SAP environments. The release schedule for SLES on Power is identical to the release schedule for SLES on Intel platform. So let's take a look at SAP, and we're going to see why SLES on IBM Power is especially interesting for that kind of environment. First, I want to tell the story of SAP HANA and IBM Power. Of course, IBM has been working with SAP for more than 50 years. It's only in 2015 when HANA was invented, when HANA went into its first production deployments, that we introduced that technology on the Power platform. Power 8 was the first generation to support SAP HANA, even though we had prototypes on Power 7. And then we introduced Power 9 in 2018 and Power 10 in 2021. And we have, obviously, Power 11 coming up this year. Now, ever since the introduction of HANA on Power, it's been a leading combination, primarily because of the capacity of the platform to be fully virtualized and scale up. And you'll see on these slides, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but some of the leading milestones that we have achieved with HANA on Power. And since day one, SAP HANA on Power was supported on SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So let me tell you why the hardware platform is so interesting for SAP environments. It's about the architecture. SAP HANA has very specific needs, being an in-memory database. It needs an architecture that has high memory bandwidth, high memory capacity, lots of cache in the processors. SAP HANA likes to scale up, meaning when you add capacity, you want to do it within the same system instead of multiplying the number of systems. And our platforms has very efficient virtualization, and that means no noisy neighbor interference. What that means is you can have multiple SAP HANA instances in production on the platform in multiple partitions. And partitions, we mean virtual machines, but at IBM Power, we call them logical partitions. Each partition running SUSE Linux. And we are the only platform able to do that. Now, we can also grow and shrink partitions on the fly, adding and removing memory to SAP HANA on the fly. And the underlying operating system, SUSE, supports it natively. And soon we'll have the capability to add and remove CPUs dynamically to your SAP HANA instance. So very interesting platform capabilities for HANA. In addition, we have the best reliability measured by independent analysts for more than 15 years. And one of the interesting things about the platform is the memory reliability, because our memory is differential DIMMs that has twice at least the reliability compared to industry standard memory, which is very interesting when you have an in-memory database that tends to use large amounts of memory. And so you want to have very reliable underlying hardware. So this is what I call the family picture. It's the current lineup for Power 10. And I want to point out that SUSE Linux is supported on all of the servers. On the left-hand side, you have our 2-socket servers. Then moving to the right, 4-socket. 2-socket for you, and then 4-socket, and then up to 16-socket for the highest Enterprise Server. And it's interesting because all of these servers have the same high-end memory with a higher reliability. All of them are certified for SAP. All of them are certified to run SUSE Linux. So there is really, you will get the same reliability and the same advantages on the smaller system as much as on the highest enterprise system. Now, some of these systems have an L in the model number, like the L1022 and L1024. These are especially optimized price-wise to run Linux, because we enforce that if you're running an L system, at least 3/4 of the machine need to be allocated to Linux partitions. So let's look at some of the other reasons why the combination of SLES and IBM Power is a good environment for SAP. First, scaling up. Scaling up is the ability, again, to increase the size of your SAP environment, more compute, more memory within the same system, and in a way that is certified by SAP, of course. So we have the ability to have SAP HANA instances up to 32 terabytes and even 40 terabytes if it's OLAP in the same system. And then we can also scale out, meaning we can have multiple power systems running the same SAP HANA instance. So this is much more flexible than any alternative server, for instance, Intel-based server. We have also a much finer granularity of allocation. We can create partitions that are just a fraction of a core, when on Intel, you would typically create a virtual machine that takes half a socket at the maximum, at the minimum, I mean. So very interesting capability. The second one that's a big plus for all customers, including SAP customer, is what we call the shared processor pool. So this is the ability to create a pool of resources, a pool of compute resources, and have that pool shared by multiple virtual machines. So you see here the example on the left-hand side. You've got 5 virtual machines on the same pool, 4 of them running SLES, 1 of them running AIX. You could also have IBM I partitions or Red Hat partitions or Ubuntu server partitions. And all of them virtualized by our hardware hypervisor, which is called Power VM, which is, again, entirely implemented in hardware with a very thin layer of control software. And when you do this, you can reduce the amount of compute that is required for your SAP deployment. It's very interesting. I mean, in a real-life customer scenario, if you were to use dedicated cores, you would need 80. By using shared processor pools, you can deploy the same solution on only 43 cores. So it's very interesting technology. And what's nice is it is fully supported by SAP. So if you go to the SAP documentation, you look at using shared processor pools on IBM Power with SUSE Linux, that is fully supported by SAP and documented as such. So really interesting technology that's an exclusive of the Power platform here. Now, another one that is only available on Power and extremely interesting for SAP deployments is virtual persistent memory. So when you create a virtual machine, and to do that, you have to go to the IBM Power console and say how much compute, how much memory is going to be allocated, and whether or not it belongs to a shared processor pool. And you have the ability to mark some of the memory as persistent. What that means is that when you reboot your SLES partition, the persistent memory devices are still there. And why is that very interesting for SAP HANA? It's because SAP HANA is an in-memory database. So when you start up SAP HANA, before you can start the database, you have to load the data in memory. It's only when the data is in memory that the database can do its formal startup. And that can take quite a long time. In fact, on larger SAP HANA deployments with 4, 8, 16 or more terabytes, it can take hours to load the data in memory before you can start up the database. So imagine if you're a large customer and has a mission critical SAP HANA database, and you have to wait 1 hour or 2 hours for the database to come up. That's hardly acceptable. But with persistent memory, you don't have that problem, because as long as you maintain power to your data center, those persistent memory devices are still there even after a reboot of the SUSE Linux operating system. So as a result, you start up your SAP HANA database in just a minute or two. And it's only available on Power. I mean, Intel used to have persistent memory in previous generation of Intel Xeon scalable processors, but they don't do it at the moment. And so Power is the only game in town for SAP HANA persistent memory. So very interesting capability here. Now I want to tell you about another one that is a very nice match for SAP and SUSE Linux. It's called Power Private Cloud with Shared Utility Capacity. So it's a mouthful, but what that means is we are able to measure on the fly, meter on the fly, how much compute is being used by all the partitions in a cluster of IBM Power systems. And we let clients purchase a base capacity as a one-time charge. And then if they exceed that base capacity, we can charge them by the minute. And that's compatible with all operating systems, including SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So you can have partitions running SUSE Linux, IBM I, AIX, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and Red Hat OpenShift. And we are able to meter the compute usage for all those partitions and charge the customer by the minute. And it's very interesting because it makes it absolutely trivial for audits of resources as well. So when the SUSE auditor goes on site to figure out how many partitions are running SUSE and how much compute capacity are they using, they get a report straight from the IBM console that makes it absolutely trivial to verify compliance. It's a very interesting capability that our larger customer absolutely love. So I want to say a few words about deployment automation. Now, we support multiple automation technologies for SAP on IBM Power in the SLES environment. Traditionally, SUSE has been using Salt and Terraform, um, and created automation capabilities based on that. And that's still available, of course. And I actually including a link here to the current version SLES 15 SP6. Now, in addition to that, SUSE is actively working on creating automation for Ansible. And as a matter of fact, SUSE is a founding member of the SAP Linux open source initiative, which is also linked from this page. And the way it works is, so this open source initiative creates roles and playbooks for Ansible to deploy and maintain SAP. And it's kind of an upstream for what is fully supported within the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server distribution. And the intention is to fully support Ansible automation inside the distribution itself. So it's a very interesting initiative, and IBM is also a member of that Linux Lag open source initiative. And that is great because it significantly increases the quality of the automation technology that we provide. And because in the end it ships in the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server distribution, you get enterprise support for those tools. Now, I want to say one more thing before we conclude. The SUSE Multi-Linux Manager, and it's not an exclusive of IBM, it's not an exclusive for SAP, but it's very interesting technology because it's a single tool management solution for Linux. And even though it's the SUSE Multi-Linux Manager, it supports, well, as its name indicates, multiple Linux, including SUSE, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Ubuntu Server. It's the only tool able to do this. And it deals with security, health, and compliance of the system, package management, patch management, content lifecycle. And when it comes to power, a couple of comments here. First, the SUSE manager itself can run in an IBM Power partition, which obviously is running SLES. And we IBM sell SUSE Multi-Linux Manager. It is now orderable in the IBM Power catalog. So you can purchase entitlements for SUSE Multi-Linux Manager Lifecycle Management Plus and also Multi-Linux Manager Monitoring through the IBM Power catalog. It's a very interesting tool that, again, applies to all Linux technologies, not just SUSE in particular. So I want to conclude this very short presentation on success stories. Obviously, we have many success stories with IBM Power and SUSE. I wanted to talk about Bosch, Robert Bosch in Bosch Group, and which is maybe one of the largest, maybe the largest, definitely one of the largest SAP user in the world. And they are running IBM Power for their SAP HANA databases. They are running SUSE products, including SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP. And this, one thing about Bosch is they're carbon neutral. They have been carbon neutral for 5 years. And having power systems is helping them greatly to maintain that carbon neutrality because of the virtualization technology, the shared processor pools, the efficiency of the platform. you get energy savings of 20% compared to prior systems. So I encourage you to click on that link and look at the case study. And we have many other case studies available on that same ibm.com/case-studies. And I encourage you to check. Just go there and type in SUSE and SAP, and you'll see popping up many solutions. So I hope you found this session interesting. It is a very short overview of the fantastic things we are doing at IBM jointly with SUSE for our SAP customers. And I am available if you have questions, and you'll find my contact information on the SUSECon website. So again, thank you very much, and please enjoy SUSECon 2025.